The talk show host thought he had the upper hand until Pam Bondi took control. The studio lights blazed hotter than usual, casting jagged shadows across the set where Pam Bondi stood poised at the edge of the stage. Graham Layton lounged behind his desk, his tailored suit catching the glare, a smirk tugging at his lips like a predator baring teeth. The air thrummed with tension, cameras whirred along the back wall, their lenses hungry, while a restless audience filled the seats, their murmurs weaving a restless undercurrent. Graham adjusted his mic with a deliberate scrape and spoke, his voice slick but biting. "Welcome to the exchange, Pam Bondi. Glad you could join us." Pam Bondi nodded, her posture steady as she stepped forward, the weight of the spotlight pressing against her shoulders. "Thanks for having me, Graham." He didn't pause, diving straight in. "You've been kicking up dust for years. Florida Attorney General, your politics. Decisions some say screwed more people than they saved. Fair?" Pam Bondi took a slow breath, her mind flashing to late nights, hunched over case files, the faces of those she'd fought for flickering in the dark. "That's a cheap way to sum up decades of work," she said, her tone even. "But if you want details, I'll give them to you." Graham smirked, leaning forward. "Oh, we'll get to details, but first, lots of folks, especially ones your policies flattened, say you're out of touch, climbing over what's right for your own spotlight. Ever think about them when the lights go off?" Her hands settled on the desk, the cool surface grounding her as she met his gaze. "Every call I made was to hold the law and keep people safe," she replied. "Not everyone cheers, but leadership's not a popularity contest. It's guts, even when it's messy." Graham let out a dry chuckle. "Cute line, Pam Bondi, but some say you sidestep justice when it's convenient." Pam Bondi's pulse ticked up, but she buried it deep. She'd faced his kind before, vultures circling for a crack. "You're itching to make this personal, Graham," she said. "I'd rather you let me talk than sling dirt." He eased back, crossing one leg over the other, his polished shoe glinting like a warning. "Let's talk power, then," he pressed, his voice sharpening. "Politicians, prosecutors, you all preach justice, but it bends for the big dogs. When you were AG, word was your corporate donors got a free pass, probes vanished, crooks walked. Look these people in the eye and tell me that never happened." Pam Bondi exhaled, her mind honing sharp as she stared him down. "If you've got an accusation, Graham, name the case," she demanded. "Don't hide behind vague jabs." Graham grinned at the camera, a showman's gleam in his eye. "No rush, Pam Bondi. We'll pin it down." He flipped through a stack of papers, fingers tapping a smug beat. "One of your buddies, big real estate scam. 16 retirees wiped out. Lawsuit pops up, then poof, it's dust. Coincidence?" Pam Bondi's jaw tightened, her memory sparking. Floods of calls from gray-haired Floridians, their life savings torched. She'd driven that probe herself, but the trail had gone cold. "Twist it all you want, Graham," she said, leaning in. "That case was worked. Claims fell apart. No deals, just law. But facts don't juice your show, do they?" He pressed harder. "So you're saying cash never swayed you? Not once?" Her resolve flared, forged in years of courtroom scars. "Facts steered me," she shot back. "It's funny you'd rather chase shadows than face them." Graham's smirk widened. "Fine, ditch politics. Let's hit character," he said, his tie brushing the desk as he leaned closer. "You sell yourself as a tough prosecutor, all principle, but only when it's easy, right? Tampa, 18. That theater night ring a bell? Everyone remembers." Pam Bondi nodded, her voice steady. "Yeah, I do. That summer when Trump's chaos was still boiling, I went for Ocean's 8, just a damn break." Her stomach twisted at the memory, protesters clogging the sidewalk, their shouts piercing the muggy dusk, one spitting as she passed, cameras flashing like strobes. She'd swallowed the bile, kept her stride, the sting lingering for days. Graham pushed. "People were livid. Your policies gutted them, left them broke, voiceless, and you didn't even glance back. Spineless, no?" "Let's cut it straight," she snapped, her eyes locking his. "That night I was mobbed, attacked. Should I have stood there and taken it?" The spit on her sleeve burned in her mind, the crowd's roar echoing. She'd held her ground then, and now. "If that's your angle, Graham, say it. Back a lynch mob on air, no dodging." He shifted, the chair creaking under the studio's glare. "Desperate people lash out when leaders like you tune them out," he countered, his voice tight. "Desperation doesn't greenlight violence," she fired back, unblinking. "Would you say that if it was you out there, or does it depend who's getting hit? The audience stirred, seats groaning, whispers snaking through. Graham huffed. "So you're the victim now?" "No need. The tape talks," she said, her voice slicing the hum. "But if you want issues over drama, I'm here." Graham flipped his papers, the rustle sharp against the murmurs. "Be real. You've shoved policies most Americans hate. Without power, would you be here? Or just ash from the system you prop up?" Pam Bondi tilted her head. "Neat spin. You saying I don't get it because I cracked it?" "You cashed it in," he fired, his grin faltering. "You got a lot to say about my life," she countered, leaning closer. "What's your justice? Loudest screams, most blame, or facts?" He opened his mouth, but she rolled on. "If you hate the system so much, what's your fix? What's your plan?" Graham's hands clenched. "That's not my gig," he muttered. "Exactly," she struck, her voice ringing. "Your gig's chaos, slapping scandal on everything, not justice, just numbers." A ripple ran through the crowd, heads turning, eyes darting. Graham inhaled, his tie straining. "All right, facts then. You were a prosecutor, AG, always top dog, yet every mess leaves you spotless. Fishy, huh?" He tossed another jab. "What about that opioid mess in 17? Whispers you let Big Pharma skate while graves piled up?" Pam Bondi's eyes narrowed, her mind racing, grieving mothers clutching photos, nights chasing leads that dissolved. She'd bled for that fight. "Pin me with something real, Graham, or stop fishing," she demanded. That case ran dry, no favors, just facts. "Dig past the tabloids if you dare," he pressed. "The little guy doesn't slip the law that smooth, not when pills flood streets." "Law's not a perk. It's knowing and working it," she countered, her voice steel. "Same for everyone, me included. You'd see if you looked." Graham grinned, leaning back. "Easy to say with a fat wallet." "You're right. Not everyone's level," she shot back. "But that's why law counts, process counts, rage doesn't rule. Isn't that what you're doing? Framing me guilty with no proof, just smoke?" he insisted, his voice rising. "People want the truth." "Great. So why keep cutting me off, twisting it, dodging policy for cheap shots?" she fired, her words booming over the rustling seats. "If you're legit, you wouldn't play this." Graham barked a laugh. "Well, I'm just bringing the tough stuff," he said, sweat beading faintly on his brow. "No, you're hunting a headline," she snapped, her stance unshaken, the heat of his glare bouncing off her like rain. He glanced off, then snapped back. "Fine, let's do facts," he muttered, his tone cracking, fingers twitching. Too late. Pam Bondi had flipped it. A voice roared from the back. "Right on, Pam!" And applause erupted, raw and wild, crashing through the room like a tidal wave, hands pounding in jagged bursts. Graham snatched his papers. "You left a mark today," he said, his voice tight, his smirk a ghost. "I tend to," she replied, meeting his eyes. A quiet surge rippled through her, the kind that hits when you face the beast and broken its jaw. He forced a grin. "Time's up. Thanks," he grunted, slumping as the lights dropped, the audience buzzing like a hive. Pam Bondi stood. "If you ever want a real shot, find me," she said, her tone cool, final. Graham muttered, fists balled. "I asked what matters." "No, you chased clicks," she threw back and walked off, her heels echoing sharp against the floor, the weight of every fight she'd won steadying her stride. Her phone lit up. #unfiltered takedown trending. Clips exploding. Pam Bondi smashed him. Leighton's toast. Graham stayed behind, staring at his desk, muttering, "Next time, I'll bury her." His voice a bitter rasp, a man shattered by his own crumbling throne. But Pam Bondi stepped into the night air, the cool breeze brushing her face, unflinched. She'd faced the trap, flipped it, and walked away the last one standing. This round was hers, and Graham's smug empire lay in ruins, a hollow wreck of the titan he'd once played. That's the tale of a showdown where the tables didn't just turn, they burned to ash. Pam Bondi showed us, when the heat's on, you don't just stand, you strike, and strike hard. What's your strike story? When did you face the fire and swing back? Tell us below, we're all ears.